Good evening. Hopefully you can hear me okay. We've had some interesting live feeds these past couple of weeks, and tonight is no exception. What is nice tonight is I can already see tonight's guest in the green room waiting, standing by, ready to go. We had a great interview last week with Chris Jones, who arrived a little bit late, but it was okay, and it was well worth the wait. I hope you agree. Tonight's guest, it would sound weird if I just said it's that hypnotist guy, but it is that hypnotist guy. He is an entertainer, performer of stage hypnosis from Ontario, Canada, and we're going to have him on. That sounded proper Yorkshire, did that? We're going to have him on. We're going to pick his brains and find out his stories from the road, any tips and tricks from him. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask and get involved in tonight's show. I'll play this graphic, and then after this graphic, we will have Richard live in the feed. Oh, there he is. He's coming to us via TARDIS. There we go. Let me just, there we go. Richard, how are you?
Do. Hey! Popped right out of my TARDIS.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is that a mug? Is that a mug?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What is it? We here in Canada we call it a mug. Yes, over there you call it a mug. So mug, yeah, it is. That's very cool. Yeah. I feel like I should be wearing my scarf or something. I mean, I don't know, Grant, if you're a Doctor Who fan, but I've been a Doctor Who fan for like forever. So like as soon as you said you were gonna jib jab with me, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I love talking to people from merry old England and everything. So yeah, yes. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Sometimes I talk too much.
It's okay. With the Doctor Who, first time round, I was a big fan of the older Doctor Who. The newer Doctor Who, I've just not got into it as much. And it's only filmed down the road. It's probably about maybe 2 hours from here that it's actually filmed. But I know there's lots of Who fans that may be watching. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's one of our better exports. That and Coronation Street.
That and Monty Python and Benny Hill. You know,
Monty Python is a friend of mine. He still does my sound from time to time. Alan is a little bit younger than me, we'll say. And I was trying to explain to him about Monty Python and how it's proper comedy. And we sat down and started to watch. Which one was it? It wasn't The Life of Brian, which is the one that starts with the Knights. That's not an injury. That's just a scratch.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So that was his first experience of Monty Python, and 30 minutes of those nights just plodding along and chopping something off. Yes, yeah. He didn't get it at all.
That's too bad. I mean, I do coming from Canada, we are is it okay if I have a beverage? Is that okay? I'm gonna have that's a Spitfire. It's from
very British.
Yeah, I know, right? It was either that or Newcastle Brown. So it's from Faversham, Kent, and I'm going to pour it into my ice cold Canadian. This is a Canadian glass, so I'm going to pour it. I'm thinking what I might do is, Grant, I might change my stage name to Kent Faversham, that hypnotist guy. Just that because
sounds really posh, actually.
Yeah, it does. It does. Hey, cheers, my friend.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers.
I have Yorkshire tea.
Yeah, Yorkshire tea. Okay, and I'm having Kentish tea, I guess. I don't know.
Lovely part of the UK. We've just got a couple of hellos. We've got Jason Nobby Morgan, who says good evening. Now, Jason's from Wales, where they filmed Doctor Who as well. Natasha.
Very cool.
Natasha was making a joke about me saying Alan was a little bit younger, and Jason Simmons is here as well. He says that he hopes we are both good and having a good week.
Yes, we are, Jason, and it's gonna get better.
It can only get better.
Of the UK folks, you guys are just wonderful people.
Brilliant. So before we get into, kind of hypnosis and stuff like that, what were you doing? Who were you before you were a stage performer? What's your history? What brought you to the stage?
When I was 6 years old, my sister Elaine, she was in high school and she brought home a book on magic. She was doing like an independent study unit for one of her classes, and so I read it and I learned some magic tricks, and then so I started doing magic at the age of 6, and then when I was 11 or 12 years old, my dad took me to the college where he works, the Ontario Police College, actually here in Ontario, Canada. And I got to see two people who would actually influence the rest of my life. The opening act, we would call him a mentalist, but like a real mentalist, not the magic kind of mentalist. He was a real mentalist, and his name was Backwards Bob. And so I know, very cool. And he would do writing on the board backwards, and then he'd spin it around and it would be the correct way. He would record himself into a microphone and play it backwards, and it would be complete sentences and paragraphs. He was a memory expert. He could write with both hands. He was ambidextrous. It was just a fantastic thing to see. And then the headliner act, so the opening act was Backwards Bob, and the headliner act, the next guy that came, super awesome guy. Remember, I'm 12 years old. His name was Mike Mandel. And he's a stage hypnotist. And when I was 12 years old, I saw the stuff that Mike Mandel did as a stage hypnotist. He would make people think, that parts of their body were talking to them. He would, the one that still sticks into my mind, a few years later, as a 12-year-old boy, I remember when he had one of the volunteers on stage go to the washroom, find out that his willy wasn't there, and then he had to come back. Oh my goodness. Just imagine, as a 12-year-old kid, I turned to my dad and I said, Dad, I want that power. I want that power. So from then on, I was doing magic, and I was learning what I could about stagecraft. I studied throughout high school. I was always on the stage. I was playing music. I was doing comedy skits and comedy bits with my friends Jason and Mark. And then when I went to university, I was doing stand-up comedy at university. And while at university, I was also studying psychology. One of the classes in psychology, we started doing hypnosis, learning about hypnosis in the clinical setting, in the clinical realm. And from a psychological perspective. And then at the end of, I think it was probably my third year of university, I was still doing magic. I was into illusions. I was working with another great magician friend of mine. His name's Chris. And so I'd go on tour with him and work as the Bud, the helper, like Paul Daniels had Debbie McGee, Chris Pillsworth had Bud. That was me, right? So it was kind of like that. It was a lot of fun, and still doing my magic. And I got a call to do to help move some props for a friend of mine who's also a magician, and the magician was the opening act for a hypnotist. And it turned out, this was like 20 some odd years later, that it turned out that the hypnotist that I saw 20 years later was Mike Mandel. Wow. Mike Mandel did a show, and I was sitting there with my best friend, Kevin, and I said to Kevin, yeah, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. And so from there, I learned all I could about hypnosis. The first book I got was the Ormond McGill Encyclopedia of Hypnosis. I got that at the Browser's Den of Magic which was a magic shop in Toronto, Ontario. Read a few pages, practiced it on my girlfriend at the time, Julie. She counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fingers. And I went, what do I do now? And so I ended up marrying her. And so,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and that was pretty much how I got my start. I went full time. This will be my 23rd year full time. This is all I do, hypnosis. Yeah. I've kind of switched back to a little bit of comedy, magic, and mentalism is what I call it. I do some virtual stuff as well. But yeah, this is all I do. I love entertaining. I love making people laugh. And yeah, that's how I became who I am. Oh, I also took tap, jazz, and ballet. I know it's hard to believe, but I did with Anita and Angela. They were my dance instructors. So it was really cool. It was really cool. I mean, I was like one of the only guys in a room full of ballerina type girls, and it was okay.
I might sign up. I mean, we always say every each week has an area of expertise or a tip that is unknown to most people, and that's tonight's tip. If you want to be a successful stage hypnotist, you have to do tap and jazz.
That's exactly it.
Exactly. We got a couple of comments here as well. Somebody, Alana Jennings, is talking about your red monkey. I sometimes have a purple monkey. Alana says, good evening. Jason says the brewery that makes Spitfire is just up the road from him. And Dylan Lovegrove says, is that Richard Cole? So the real Richard Cole.
Yes, Dylan, it is. It really is. It's really me. Dylan was a good guy. Well, he still is a good guy, I guess. I know. That I met. I think we met at HYPNOTISE. Yeah, we did meet at HYPNOTISE live. That was 2 years ago. Grant, I don't know if anybody's talked about HYPNOTISE live or anything, but it's a fantastic conference, a fantastic convention in Las Vegas. And I
was supposed to be there last year, but COVID happened, so I couldn't. I was supposed to be speaking there. The year before that I was supposed to be there, but something emergency happened here, so I couldn't do that. So this year I kind of says I'm gonna not go this year, but maybe see where we're at next year, just to see where we're at. Jason Simmons asks, do you perform magic and hypnosis as part of the same show, or do you always keep the two separate?
You know what, Jason? That's a great question. And when I first started, funnily enough, is that a word? I'm making that a word. We'll just add it to Webster's.
It's a word now.
It is. Funnily enough, when I saw the guy who inspired me to become a stage hypnotist, he was the headline act, and the opening act was a magic show. And my friend Kevin and I, and we kind of talked back and forth, and I said, well, I don't know if having a magic show before a hypnosis show is such a good idea. Maybe people are going to think it's still the magic show, right? It's still how that goes. It didn't take me very long to realize that most people generally don't think that at all, especially if the stage hypnotist is a good quality entertainer. And as soon as their friends go up, they kind of know it's not a magic show anymore. You know, there's not magic. So to answer Jason's question, yes, sometimes I do. And it is entirely dependent on the length of time that the client has hired me to perform. A lot of clients, I've been doing this for a long time, and there was a time where you could do a full 90-minute stage hypnosis show. It was a lot of fun, keep it going, laughs, and everything was fun, and it was good. Nowadays, after the MTV era happened, for those of you younger than me, there was a time when MTV used to play videos, right? So after the MTV era, they had like 20-minute shows that were reality-based TV, and just like quick cuts. So an entire generation came out where they needed quick hits, and you couldn't really capture their attention unless you were a really good performer. And there are some really good performers who can capture people's attention for that length of time, 90 minutes. So I ended up, when a client calls me, long way to get here. Long way, Jason. I'm sorry. So if a client's looking for entertainment for 90 minutes to fill a 90-minute time slot, I will come out and I'll do opening warm-up, which is usually a mentalism type effect, or I have people, it's always audience interactive so that it's still fun. I have people draw on a sheet of paper. They draw pictures, mix those pictures up, and through the process of reading people's body language, I'm able to give back whoever drew which picture. So it's framed. The effect is framed as a psychological experiment. I don't say it's a magic trick. I'm not pulling hankies out. It's not blatantly magic. But that's kind of how I will do magic in a hypnosis show. And I think it's okay. Entertainment's entertainment, right? If at the end of go ahead.
I think it's like cultural differences as well. In the UK, people are so very cynical about hypnosis. I think if you mix it here, it does take away from it, but especially an American and a Canadian audience, where they do seem to be more accepting of stage hypnosis. I mean, Canada, you guys have had some amazing hypnotists come from Canada.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's a good breeding ground from it. What's the difference in ages? Like I know in the States, they can hypnotize children of an early age. Is that the same in Canada? Or I know in the UK we're strictly over 18s only. We have some really weird laws.
Yeah, you know, the rules for hypnosis in Canada, and especially in my province, they're not as strict or rigid as in some other places. You can, I mean, I have seen some across Canada. I have seen some people at fairs, they'll hypnotize, you know, I call them under 16s.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's okay if that's all you can, if that's all you can get up. At least you get a little bit of entertainment from those youngsters. Personally, I don't think it's really entertaining to say to a 10-year-old, imagine yourself at the beach. Okay. Imagine yourself putting suntan lotion. They do that every day, right?
Yeah.
If you got a lawyer in a 3-piece suit and he's the head of a large law firm, and you say, imagine yourself at the beach sipping on a cocktail, and he goes like that, that's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Because he's the boss. So I mean, I perform at resorts as well, and so they're family resorts.
Yeah.
And they have ages, you know, young children all the way up to grandparents and that sort of stuff. And so I don't invite anyone under 16, but I phrase it. And this might be something, this might help the people watching. Here's the phrase that I use and the way that I bring volunteers up. I know there's lots of people that will just say, if you want to get hypnotized, come on up, sit down in the chairs or stand in the rows behind. If you do that at a fair or a family resort, all the chairs will be filled with 6 to 10-year-olds before you're even turned around, right? So what I do is I start out by saying this. I say, if you are 21 years of age or older and you want to volunteer to become the star of the show, come on up. I've got some chairs here for you. So I get a few people come up, and you can see, sorry about this. Somebody is actually calling me. I got to turn that off. I'm sorry about that. I can't talk to you right now. I'm talking to England. Leave me alone. That's just crazy. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Where was I? Yeah. So and then what I say is, so I say 21 and up, come on up. And then I go up and I say, okay, if you're 30 and up, come on up. Oh, wait a minute. And you kind of make a joke of it because they'll laugh, and because the 19-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, the people who are like somnambulists right away, they're like, oh, I'm next. And you're going the other way. And so it's kind of a funny laugh. And every once in a while, I will get a grandparent or two that comes up. And I'll say, yeah, it's okay. I mean, you look about 28, but I'll let you come up anyway. You know, you just give them those platitudes, right? And so they come up, and then if it's full, I'll actually start the show. If it's not full, then I'll drop it down to like 19 and up, come on up. And then 18 and up, come on up. And then usually by then I have all the chairs filled. Now I perform at resorts, right? And I also sell DVDs of the show, DVDs. So back in the olden days, we used to sell VHS copies. And when I was doing it, I would sell DVDs, and now it's digital. It's all digital YouTube videos now. So, but I would sell these videos of the show. And so what I quickly realized by watching the juggler who would perform on the Tuesday and I'd perform on the Wednesday, by watching the magician who would perform on the Thursday and I'd perform on the Wednesday, was that I needed to sell something a bit more. And I realized quickly that parents will buy something if their kids are in it. Yeah. So I would go down to 18, 17, 16, and they'd come up, and then there'd be a kid right in the front row. And he's like his hand can't go any higher. He's literally levitating out of the chair like that. And I would say, how old are you? And they'd say, I'm 11. And I go, oh, I don't normally invite 11-year-olds up on stage, but I'll tell you what, just this once, 11 years old or up, boom. And then you get or 10, you get them up there. And I have the kids kneel in the front row, right? So you've got the lower level, and then you've got the people seated and the people standing. Makes a great video image, right? And anybody, if there's a newspaper guy there taking a photo, I say, this is a good opportunity to take a picture. Because it's all about promotion. And so then what I do is I do the heavy light or bucket or balloon, whatever it's called. If you tell a kid or a child, imagine your hand has a heavy book in it or a bucket full of sand. They go, oh, it's so heavy. Imagine there's balloons, and they just naturally go like that, right? So it's kind of my throwaway pre-test, right? But it gets the kids on video, and I'm not really looking at the front row. I'm looking at the seated people and some of the older people in the back that are standing. Then what I do is I go around, everybody's got their eyes closed, and I give everybody a number. Those who I want to keep for the show, I give them a number, 1, 2, 3. I have them open their eyes, and I say, if you didn't get a number, the audience is going to give you a big round of applause. You can go back to your seat. So then
that's a really nice way of dismissing them from the stage as well, actually.
Yeah, it's like inclusion, exclusion, right? Like they wanted to be a part of the show. I'm hired to entertain as many of the guests as I can. They come and they do their little shtick, and they're out. And Grant, parents will buy the video for their kids. They'll spend the $25 for that because their kid was in the first part.
This going on as well, because they've seen some involvement as well. They'll still purchase it as well. It was a great point that you made about putting the younger people kneeling down at the front, because of how that looks visually. If someone's taking pictures of it, it looks visually good. I see a lot of it, and I've been guilty of it in the past, of a lot of hypnotists that their concern is about the volunteers, the audience. They're thinking of 1,000,001 different things, but they're not thinking about how the stage actually looks from an outsider looking in. And these are the things that end up on social media and that sell the show. So if you frame your stage looking right, like you just said then it makes all the difference, because you know, someone takes a picture and puts that on Facebook, they see a stage full of people with their arms up in the air that looks really well, and seem more likely to get future bookings from it. So yeah, it's a great tip.
I call that newspaper worthy or yearbook quality photos.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you have like yearbooks from high school, and it's like the photographer is just waiting for that right shot to show everything off. A lot of the times, and I mean, this came about early because one of the guys that helped me, he was a radio broadcaster for one of our news radio stations. His name's Brian. And so he was always encouraging me to get the newspaper shot, because the newspaper, sometimes they're inundated with, flooded with inquiries for different events that are going on a Friday night or a Saturday night. They got to come in, they got to get a shot of what's going on, and then they got to leave. So they're only there for like 10, 15 minutes. So you come out, you do something fun, you give them a photo right out of the gate. The stage was packed, arms were like this, you had kids, you had adults, you had grandparents. It was packed. That's a beautiful shot. And then they're out. And
it looks so dramatic. A lot of hypnotists, when they put pictures up on Facebook, etc., you've got, and I do it, and we all do it, you've got a line of people leaning on the person next to them, effectively what looks like they're asleep, but to the untrained eye, just a person looking at that just looks like a row of people that maybe is asleep. It's not it doesn't tell a story in and of itself, but seeing people with just the light and heavy hands is intriguing if you don't know what it is, and it makes you want to know more. So yeah, I like that.
What are the other things? Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think your history of performing the comedy and the magic helped you become a better stage hypnotist?
Totally. I was in a number of theater productions, and as I told you before, I took dance. The dance studio I belonged to, they would do a lot of musical theater numbers. And so I learned a lot about blocking. I learned a lot about staging. My friend Chris, the magician, he would also teach me a lot about blocking and lighting, making sure you're in the light. And so spending time on stage with other people, and especially watching other people, gives you a greater appreciation for what you do. I see a lot of hypnotists that will turn their back to the audience. Once people have closed their eyes, there's no need for you to turn your back. You can stand to the side and you can see your row, or you can walk to the back. The other thing I see a lot of hypnotists do is pacing. They're like human watches, right? You know, the old swinging watch. So they just keep going like this, or they go halfway, and there's no purpose to their movement. I spent some time with his name escapes me right now. Bob. It escapes me. It'll come to me in a minute. He was a dancer in Bob Fitch. That's who it is. Bob Fitch. He was in a number of Broadway musicals in New York City, and he came up, and I spent some time with him and learned from him, you know, to move with purpose on stage, and just those little things add to a show. I mean, I talked about how to get a good photo. But there's other things, like just knowing there's a story in a picture. When a photographer wants to do a picture with people, the sideways laid down, I let them know that I'm gonna let them know when to take that picture. And when they take that picture, I have a banana and a monkey. I don't know if you can do the zoom out shot for latecomers, but those who've seen it before, yeah, the banana and the monkey. So there's the banana, that's the monkey, that's an arrow, that's a completely different thing. That's a Wayne Gretzky rookie card and a paper shredder, but we don't need to get into that. That's yeah, way to get it all off track. The what I'll do is, I know they're going to want that initial photo with everybody laid down, so all the heads go to one side, and I take the banana and I put it so the last guy is holding on to the banana.
Brilliant.
So that when somebody sees a photo,
yep,
they go, "Oh, all these people, there's a banana." And it's an immediate, stop, an immediate question mark. And it also, other hypnotists in my area, they don't use a banana, right? It's like my thing. Well, they will after this.
Yeah. I must admit, you brought up some great points there about the blocking on stage. And again, it's something that's not brought up much, because a lot of performers find themselves as performers rather than studying and doing stuff. But blocking on stage is probably one of the most important things that separates what looks like an amateur show from a professional show. It's easy if you're nervous to keep pacing up and down, but to plant your feet and not move it has an authority about it as well. And if you know exactly what the audience is seeing, you can control what they're doing. And this is not just for stage hypnotists, for hypnotherapists that are watching this, for looking for tips about doing demonstrations or public speaking. That whole planting your feet and having a reason why you're stood at that particular part of the stage, why you stood at that particular part of the stage. There's a lot of kind of spatial anchoring that goes on stage. So yeah, it's a great point that no one's brought up yet during this series. So yeah, thank you for that.
Grant, you said something. Grant, you said something about spatial anchoring. One thing that I learned early on in my career were the different locations on the stage. Like if you divide it up into 6 or whatever, people can Google this and look it up. But each position represents a different feeling that the audience gets. For instance, when you come on stage, you usually enter stage left. Is it stage left? You come on, because that's the way. Well, the way I learned it is that's the way we read. Now I know some cultures read the other way. So when someone comes on like this, oh, it's the start of something. Or if they come up from the middle, the curtains part, and they come up from center, that's that's very dramatic. It's boom, it's right there. Each space on stage has a different meaning. And one tip that I did probably the first 10 shows that I did was I would tape my set list on the front of the stage, like here are the skits I'm going to do, and in order. And then and I got that tip from David Copperfield. I've met David Copperfield, the magician, a few times, and been up near the front, and I could see that on his stage he had taped the show that he was going to do, and I thought, oh, that's kind of clever, because then you don't have to remember as much, right? But one thing that I would do is I would take a big piece of tape, and I would write down, "Why are you here?" and stick it. Stick it in like 4 different areas. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that every time, only I can see it, right? The audience is in the audience. And so I would walk to a spot, and I would see the tape on the floor and say, do I need to go there? Why am I there? Okay, well, I don't need to go there then. I feel like moving. Wait, where am I going to go? Oh, why am I moving? Because we do it unconsciously, right? We feel that pacing needs to work, and we don't know that we can communicate with this side of the audience simply by turning our head and talking to them. We don't have to go to that side. We just have to turn our head. So these are like just little tips that that I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I haven't thought about that tip and that idea for years. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. Good tip, Grant. Well done.
Yeah.
Good job.
It makes such a difference. I mean, if you want to deliver a very powerful statement or suggestion to the audience, to be at the front of the stage center, it adds that drama to it as well. And the audience doesn't know why it feels like that. It just feels like that. So,
it just feels. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Right. So the show's called Grant Talks Funny Bits. Tell us about your worst show, the show that there was the biggest challenge that you learned so much from afterwards. What was your most challenging show to date?
One of the things that I sometimes question myself, and I sometimes wonder, have I gotten to the point in my show where I've made accommodations for anything that can go wrong? When I worked with my friend, the magician Chris Pillsworth, we would always have backup everythings, right? Like backup batteries for the backup batteries, right? So when I started doing my hypnosis shows, I would make backup routines in case something went wrong. And it was just like, it was just, I don't know why. It was just something that I've always done in case of malfunction. Where are we going to go? And I'm often asked, what was the worst show you ever had, or what was the strangest thing or something that you weren't prepared for? And so I've had to think about it, and nothing has really gone wrong. Knock on wood. Knock on the TARDIS. Gone wrong. But the one thing I wasn't ready for, and it happened early on when I was doing high school shows, in a town called Windsor, where I ended up doing, they hired me for like 12 years in a row. So it was, I guess it wasn't that bad, but I was unprepared for, there's a skit where it's a standard skit where you turn somebody's shoe into a cell phone.
Yes.
And so it was early on in my career, and the kids had just started to get their phones and that sort of stuff. So I had said to one girl, I said to the whole group, anytime you hear me say the word ring, your shoe is a cell phone, you'll take it off and answer it. Someone important will be there. And so I'm going down the line and I'm talking to people, and I look, and one girl is getting frantic. And so I'm putting people back to sleep as they go, because I'm going to handle this person. And she gets up and she starts walking away. And as I start moving towards her, this is in a big gymnasium, so all the kids in the bleachers are watching. And she almost gets to the door, and I said, "Your hand's frozen to the door." And her hand's on like this, and she's just like like this. And I'm thinking, as most people do, oh no, she's having some kind of ab reaction or something. That's okay. I'm ready for it. I know what to do. I'm ready. And I go over to her and I say, "What's going on?" And she says, "I'm not getting a good signal in the gym." The audience just loses it, starts laughing. Meanwhile, I'm freaking inside. I'm like, "Oh no, what's going on? This is," and she goes, "I'm not getting a good signal in the gym." And so I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you what, there's a spot. That's why I stand right in the middle over here. Come with me, and you'll hear crystal clear who it is." And she goes, "Hello? Oh, it's Mickey Mouse. It's Mickey Mouse. Mickey, I'm so glad you." And it was the audience is laughing and I am freaking out. I'm like, "Oh," and it ended up to be, not terrible, but terrible for me. Like, it was that unexpected moment I didn't have a plan for. So yes. So that's about Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not doing enough shows, but
I do
the
think
extent of my.
it's a great point that you made there as well, though, about like the audience going wild when that's happened. It's what looks like the unplanned things when the audience thinks they're seeing something new for the first time or unique to them that get that massive reaction, sort of thing. So that's brilliant. What's the best show you've done? As in, and we all have a show that you kind of, the one that you visualize when you're mentally rehearsing, or the one that you were doing for a celebrity or for somebody famous or a beautiful venue. What's the show that when you did it, you came off stage like, now I've made it?
Yeah, this one's easy. This one's easy. And a friend of mine, and I didn't get paid for it. It was something free that I did for a friend of mine, who's still my friend. He called me up, and he lives in Hawaii.
Nice.
And he called me up, and he said, thanks, because I kind of helped him get started and get his show off and that sort of stuff. And he called me up and he said, listen, I have a high school here in Hawaii that they have like after grads or after proms. And he said, would you be interested in doing a show in Hawaii? And I turned to my wife. And before I tell you what I did, remember, this is February in Canada, and it's freezing rain, snowing sideways. It's like the Millennium Falcon when it goes into transwarp there, right? And things are just, it's so cold. And he says, would you like to come to Hawaii to do a show? And I said to my wife, I said, my friend Clark wants to know if I can go to Hawaii and do a show for him. She said, tell Clark we would love to. Apparently there's no way I'm going to Hawaii. So it was on the Big Island. It was on the Big Island, and it was at a golf and country club or something. And it was Grant. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning before the students had arrived. And I was standing on this black sand, volcanic black sand, of the ocean was coming in, and I was standing there looking up at the stars. And I had helped a friend become successful, and in return, he offered me a show. And here I am doing a show in Hawaii under a cloudless night with the stars and the whole universe out there saying, good on ya.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the highlight of my career so far.
It's one of the things that I love about performing stage hypnosis. It does send us to places that are truly magical, and those moments are amazing. So yeah, I did a show in Dubai a few years ago, and afterwards I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. And then when I got back to the UK, my first show was in a place called Barnsley in South Yorkshire, which is the complete opposite, the complete opposite of that. And I remember being in the changing room with all the broken chairs and the broken fruit machine, looking out onto the stage thinking, oh dear me, 2 days ago I was in Dubai, now I'm in Barnsley. But Barnsley is a great place, by the way, in case anybody's watching from Barnsley.
You know what? And you appreciate that venue even more now, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Because I've always had this mindset that there are people who hate the winter. I hate winter. It's so cold. It's so rainy. It's so wet. Yeah. You got to have the winter to appreciate the summer.
Very
right?
True.
You got to have these antitheses, and once you become appreciative of the opposites and how they help to elevate each other, then you don't hate anything. You just everything has its own place, to each their own, and it becomes a more wonderful, appreciative self that you become when you're able to do that.
Very much so.
I don't know, maybe I'm getting metaphysical or that sort of stuff, but that's how I am.
Yeah. Where do you see stage hypnosis, performance hypnosis going kind of after COVID's done and things get back to normal? What do you think the future of stage hypnosis is?
If you had asked me 5 or 6 months ago, I would have said maybe virtual. It would have gone virtual because there's a lot of entertainment that's now virtual. Stage hypnosis, I don't feel stage hypnosis transfers as well as in the virtual realm as other entertainment type stuff does, like magic and that sort of stuff. I think stage hypnosis. I think hypnosis. There's two different stage hypnosis. Stage hypnosis, I think, is gonna evolve. Is gonna become more showy. There's a friend of mine out of his name's Patrick, and I think he's out of Belgium or something. Patrick Picard.
Patrick was on the show. Yeah, he was on the show a few weeks back. And his staging is just unbelievable. When he has the clouds above the stage, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I guess I know that they used to do stage shows like that, and then there was an era where the mindset of the hypnotist became one where all I have to do is walk in with a suit bag and a briefcase to put the check in. And I think it needs to evolve. It needs to grow. Can it still be done, with chairs and people, or not chairs and people, Yeah, it sure can. But I think the guys that are going to rise to the top are going to be like that. They're going to have sets, and they're going to have staging, which is elegant and intriguing and inspiring. Audiences appreciate effort. So if you put in the effort to make the stage look well, if you put in the effort to look well, you put in the effort to have a polished production, success is the reward from that. Yes, you can, like you said, you can turn up and just have a microphone and just do a show. But if Beyonce needs fancy lights and backing dancers and all that lot, then I certainly need to have a stage that is dressed and looks the best that it can do. You can't, just because you can only do it that much doesn't mean you should. So yeah, I do think stage hypnosis does need that effort, that production value putting in there as well. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, Patrick's stuff is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. And he does. He was at HypnoThoughts, and he took a picture. He does these really amazing photos. And a lot of hypnotists, a lot of stage hypnotists. Well, I guess a lot of hypnotists. They're into photography as well. Dan Laurinaitis, I think that's Dan Laurinaitis.
Yes.
Yeah. He does fantastic stuff. And
yeah, I saw the image that he put up of was it Chicago the other day? The drone.
Chicago.
Shot. That was amazing.
Wow.
So Dan's a guest that I'd like to get on the show as well. Actually, you've reminded me to send him a message after this.
Send him a message. Tell him Richard Cole, that hypnotist guy, said he needs to get on to talk about photography.
Yeah. I love how, I mean, we talk a lot about pivoting the stage hypnosis, but he started creating candles, I believe. And that's become a massive business for him. So, yeah.
And I think, Grant, that's what this has allowed us to do. Like in my business, I've been doing it so long. I know the busy times. I know the slow times. I know my market. I know when to be busy. I know when not to be busy. I know when my wife and I are going to go on cruises or when we're going to go camping. And so I look forward to those types of things. And the COVID lockdown and the shows stopping, it has forced those people who work too hard to at first freak out. Oh no, what am I going to do? And then stop and say, well, now I have the time to focus on this. Anyway,
Nikolai.
plays guitar.
Yeah,
Nikolai.
yes.
That's it. I'm Canadian. Nikolai. He could say Nikolai. He's a fun guy. I met at HYPNOTISE. Very fun guy out of Boston, and he plays guitar. And never knew that until this year or last year, I guess. And he goes on his page and he shows himself playing guitar, and it's just like, it's fascinating when you're able to. I love you more when I know you outside of hypnosis. I met a guy, Jason O'Callahan, out of Ireland, and wow, I knew him from like Facebook forums and from other forums in the Stage Hypnosis community. To sit down and chat with him over breakfast, and you realize that these people, they're outside of their stage personas, they're real people. They're like, and they've got interests and stuff, and I just really like that. I just really like getting to know people outside of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Dylan Lovegold says, didn't he get an award for that picture? I believe he might have got an award for that. I don't know. But when we get him on, we'll ask him.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
I always ask guests if there was 2 books that you would recommend, whether it be about stagecraft, stage hypnosis, or a business or personal development book. 2 books that have been important to you in helping you develop who you are. What would those be?
The first one would be How to Pour a Proper Beer, How to Pour a Proper Pint. I've been doing a lot of talking, and so it's getting kind of thirsty. No, in all honesty, that's not proper. I didn't pour the whole thing. I'm sorry, but I
45-degree angle.
Or as the Americans would say, well, I guess 45 degrees is still 45 degrees. We're metric up here, so we could talk in kilometers and Celsius and meters. Yeah, so the 2 most important books for me, probably would be The 1 Minute Manager. The 1 Minute Manager. And there's so many that I've picked little bits and pieces out of. The 1 Minute Manager is pretty much how I communicate with people, and how I run my show. I think of the clients who book. Do you know the one I'm talking about? The 1 Minute Manager?
I believe so. Yes.
Yep. The name escapes me right now. I was just looking at it the other day. Actually, I was looking at the sequel, which is Who Moved My Cheese, which is another good one.
Yeah. And very apt with the current climate, people having to go through the change and everything. So yeah, Who Moved My Cheese is a classic.
Apropos of now, that one. That's I'm going to stick with just that one. I'm going to stick with that one because all the others that I've read and I've heard about, there's snippets and they're all along the same plane. I'm
a big believer, especially in stage hypnosis books. It's an evolution. You read a certain book that someone recommends about stage hypnosis, and you go, oh, that's, if you knew, you go, oh, that's amazing information. You go out, you apply some of it works for you, some of it doesn't. And then you come back to it a few years later and you go, right, most of that is a load of rubbish, but that one bit's really good. And that's what it is. Each book is right, and it works for the person that wrote that book for them. And you can always get, like you said, a little tidbit from each book that makes you go, oh, that's brilliant. A lot of people recommend Orman McGill's New Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis, and most professionals on the show have all kind of had the same thing. And no one disrespects the book in any way, shape, or form, or Orman McGill.
No.
But they all say it's a great book. You've got to have it. But when you come back to it now, you realize that most of it is not relevant and is not good for stage hypnosis now. But you've got to have it to go through it to understand that it's not right now. If that makes sense.
I think you said an interesting thing. You said evolution. It's an evolution that we go through. And when I work with some other upcoming hypnotists and just other business professionals as well, one of the things that I always tell them is I say, focus on learning what you can right now, but remember that you will be maturing in your business. And there are things, Grant, that you and I have read, that you and I have heard, that at the time we were like, no, because we weren't mature in the business. And now as we look back, we go, oh yeah, that seems to make sense. It's like when you're a kid and your parent says, you know, don't stay out too late, or make sure you're home in time to get lots of sleep. And you're like, whatever, I'm not listening. I'm not paying attention. And then as you get older, you go, oh yeah, they kind of were right. I should have been listening to them. It's about maturing, and you mature in everything, and you mature in your business. There are books that I got when I first started doing stage hypnosis, which talked about marketing, because that's what it was. There were books that talked about psychological stuff, the precursors to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and so I'd flip through them, and it was just like too much for me. And there were just books of all kinds of things that one little thing made sense at the time, but everything else, it was just too much. And I realized that that when I go back to those books now and I look at them and I go, well, duh. Well, that makes complete sense. That makes sense now, but it didn't make sense back then. So we evolve in our knowledge, and so nuggets that we get from mentors or coaches might not mean anything to us right now, because we're just not mature in the business enough to know what they're talking about. If that makes sense. I'm sure that makes sense to you.
Makes absolutely loads of sense. Yeah, spot on. You've been an absolutely fantastic guest. If you were to give one tip to a upcoming hypnotherapist or stage hypnotist, if you were to give one tip for them about stagecraft or anything like that, or a tip you would want to give yourself starting out again, what would that be?
Be as unique as you possibly can. Figure out something that nobody else has, or nobody else is doing, or nobody else has done, and make that your brand. Like move into that. When I first started, my whole thing was get a show. One of my inspirations was Jeff Ronning, and he said, the first thing out of the gate, before you even come to any training, is book a show. What? Book a show? And he told us how to book a show. So go book a show. And so we would book a show. And then now the spurs, the fire is put right to you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? Cancel the show? No, you got to learn. And he says, put together a show that you can do, go out and get paid to practice. Get paid to practice. So once I had a show that I could do and felt comfortable about, now I needed to make it my own, which differentiated me from everybody else doing just a show. So find something that is you, find something quirky about you. Banana, monkey, don't do those. They're mine. Okay. It's just like you've had me for almost an hour now. You know, I'm a little bit quirky. I like to laugh. I like to make jokes. I go off on tangents left and right. So find out what's quirky about you incorporate that into a show and make that you. Make that part of who you are.
Brilliant. Yeah, Dylan says, great listening, guys. Hope to see you again in the near future, Richard. So fantastic. Richard,
Yeah,
it's
for
been
sure,
an
Dylan.
absolute pleasure. Guys, make sure you follow Richard on his social medias. Check out his websites. Check out anything he's got coming up. Make sure you subscribe to both my channel and to Richard's channel as well. And most importantly, guys, take care, and I shall see you next week.